All right. Thank you for coming on today, Jack. Thank you for everybody listening in. This is Coach Ray Z, and this is Athletic Definition. And today, my guest is Jack Dempsey. Jack, you have to click on the little monkey, and then you'll be able to speak.
Hey Ray, how's it going, Coach? It's nice to be with you on the show. How's it going?
Good, good. Um, it's been an interesting experience. I was all set up. I have a little studio set up, and then the neighbors had a party unexpectedly, and there's this music really loud. So I'm like, oh, I got to move. So I had to make different arrangements, but it's a learning experience. So, uh,
It's all right. It's all right. I just got done with a pretty serious training session. Pretty much the last heavy night of rolling live before I compete next Saturday. So, if you had a little bit of a delay, it actually helped me out. So we're good. So,
and I definitely want to get into the competition. And hopefully, as the show goes on, we'll get some more audience members come in and listen in. Uh, Regardless, even if you don't see audience members, people are still listening in through the broadcast. So, and then it'll be rebroadcast. So I appreciate you coming on as my guest. And for the people listening in that don't know you, why don't you tell us a little bit about you? I met you through the community of Jiu Jitsu, which is great. And then besides that, we have a few things in common, like our love for coffee and good.
Yeah, indeed. Um, Definitely, we met each other, through the passion of jujitsu and the camaraderie. Pretty much through Clubhouse, and just kind of finding that commonality that usually jujitsu people don't have a problem finding. It's as real as it gets as far as who you are on the mats and who you are in real life are it's very similar, and so no surprise that we're friends today.
No, and as I get to know you more and more, I found it interesting how you were interested in Jiu Jitsu, but it took you a while because you were handling responsibilities to really get into it. So, growing up, were you playing other sports? Like
Yeah, baseball was pretty much the biggest part of my youth, and then some boxing. Larry Holmes' gym was right across the river from where I grew up in New Jersey, and so between throwing hands and doing a whole lot of baseball, a little bit of karate here and there, some Jeet Kune Do. Um, I was always an athletic kid, and you know, it's funny that you said that about the jujitsu journey is actually very interesting because you're right. I delayed my jujitsu journey because I promised my professor that I wouldn't start unless I could fully commit. I didn't want to be the type of person to tackle a new endeavor without a full commitment to it. And some people might feel one way or the other about that, but I'm not the type of person that's going to do like 1 day a week of anything, and at the time when I had first met Professor Fabio Leopoldo, he had just moved, out to Ventura, California, and started his academy. And at that time, I had just started a business, and so we were basically two local business owners in Ventura. And so we would just bump into each other at community events and just kind of being members of, Chamber of Commerce, and just, as he was developing his academy and business, I was doing, my thing too. And so every once in a while we'd see each other out. And of course he would, constantly badger me to come in and take some classes. But, I was literally doing the Ironman 80 to 90 hours a week, working a full-time job, starting a new business. And a lot of people talk a good game about working, 70 to 80 hours a week, but but I was actually doing that. So, jujitsu wasn't really part of that plan at the time. And eventually, when I sold my business, I decided to take a career position, and it freed up a lot of time. And I strolled in. Um, it was September 11th, 2017, and I strolled into the academy and never looked back.
I never knew that you did some boxing with well, training with the Larry Holmes um, facility. Did you ever get to meet with him? That is so cool.
Yeah, 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 definitely. I, as a little kid, you kind of see things differently than when you grow up. I do have fond memories of it, but if my own sons were in the position to be in that environment, I would gracefully bow out. I don't think I would raise my kids to box.
No, me neither. I did boxing. I love it, but then at the same time, I know that there's a lot of damage being done to the brain, and for your kids, of course, who would want that. And
Yeah, there's also a bit of a dark side to it as well. When you're young, you know, uh, either you're either you're basically the worm on the hook, or you're fishing. you know and I don't think it's fair for any kid to be put in a position to basically be a punching bag. you know and so it's interesting that was like the first like glimpse of combat sports for me. Was actually like maybe not the greatest experience, but it is what it is, and it gave me a perspective about the way I would want to learn martial arts. So when I did finally commit to jujitsu, and I immediately kind of noticed the differences between striking sports and jujitsu itself.
yes, that is one thing that could be very common in the boxing. You're just there as a punching bag for someone to get the work in,
That's right. Yeah,
and
it's
then
not. I don't think it's really talked about much. And it's and it's not me bad mouthing anything in particular, but I think it's just the way it is. If you're not an all star, if you're not, you know, uh, big, strong, fast, what reason do you really have to be there as a child, right? Maybe this, you can learn self defense in boxing, of course. Learning to throw hands is important. I teach my boys how to throw hands. Um, but to take it up to where you're actually somebody's like training partner, that's a much different scenario than taking classes.
for sure, and the after all the boxing, especially like back in that era, it was like you trained hard every day, and you were expected to maybe do a bunch of rounds without headgear, and that looking back on it, it's not the healthiest way to train.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 42 years old, so we can kind of do the math on it. And, so I was growing up, in the 80s, and then teenager in the 90s, right? So playing it safe wasn't really a thing in combat sports back then. I think it was a kind of risky business, if you ask me. So, um, but, like I said, it doesn't have to be a fond memory for it to impact you in a good way. That's definitely one of the lessons that you can take away from something that maybe did not work out, is that what you don't like, in sports or in anything. So you have to teach people how to treat you. You have to know your threshold for bullshit. You have to kind of figure it out along the way. So like I said, not the greatest experience, but learned a lot.
And then after your delay and kind of, I definitely understand. I, not to half-ass anything. If you're going to commit, you want to commit. And now that you committed, how long have you been practicing jujitsu?
I basically train, no matter what, 3 to 4 days a week. So I've been consistent, 3 to 4 days a week on the mats, since 2017. Um, so got my blue belt, um, say 14 months into my journey. Um, I put a ridiculous amount of mat time in my first year. Ended up getting a pretty major injury. I had disc replacement surgery 2 weeks after receiving my first belt promotion to blue belt, and so that sidelined me as I was building momentum. I was actually getting ready to compete, and that's when the injury happened. And so it was a pretty interesting moment to get a belt promotion, to go from a white belt to a blue belt to a broken neck. And so that was a scene. You know?
So, did the injury happen while you were training or outside of training?
No, it definitely happened while training. It definitely happened while training. We can't really pinpoint the moment that it happened per se, but let's just say that it was not your average evening as far as aggression and control. And part of jujitsu is really like learning your limitations. Um, I think there's a lot of truth to the fact that when I first got that belt promotion, that maybe I was feeling myself a little bit too much, right? So I would do, say, just to give you like for an example, you know, I would do 12 6-minute rolls with no rest rounds, and that's not exactly a recipe for success.
No, that's
Not
really
not at
taxing
that
on the
level.
body.
Very
And
taxing. Very taxing.
for people
Uh,
listening in, a roll is basically like a round, and that's when you grapple and basically try and choke and break each other's limbs in a very controlled manner. Um, and so you broke your neck
yeah.
because you mentioned your back, and then your neck as well.
No, it was my C67 is I had full titanium disc replacement.
Wow.
Yep. So they had to go in from the front, make an incision, pull out the broken disc, scrape out all the debris, pop in. It's called a pro disc. It's titanium with ceramic, and they pop it into your neck, and it's like the Terminator. You basically go from having a broken disc to having a titanium disc, and then you just have to heal and rehab and strengthen your neck. And I was back on the mats in 9 months. 9 months,
When
and
you
that was
broke your neck, did that like just at any point make you not consider going back to jiu-jitsu? Because that's a major injury.
yeah. Most people I think would walk away at that point. Um, if I do give myself kudos for anything, it was basically the no quit mentality had already kind of sunk in. So getting hurt didn't actually flip a switch for me. It didn't actually bother me enough to actually say, look, I'm going to walk away. You know, um, if anything, it taught me a lesson about doing things right. It taught me a lesson about moderation as I age. That I'm not a 20-year-old kid. In on the mats. So I had to get in better shape. I had to take care of my body. Just kind of hit the reset button. So even though I had gone from white to blue belt, it was almost like starting again. So, when I restarted in a very, very safe and controlled way. I went through the fundamentals curriculum just like a white belt all over again, only as a blue belt, and then, kind of did like a cycle of fundamentals over and over and over until eventually I felt comfortable enough. to do some live training. And what I found out is that everything I had done to physically rehab actually made me a lot stronger than I was prior to the neck break. Um, and then over time, the confidence just grows and grows. And fast forward to 2000, and I'm on the mats competing. So
That is amazing, and when you get injured, I have never had a broken neck, so I can't even fathom what that would feel like, or if I'd want to continue. But my injury was a nice, perfect cut right over my eye, so it got stitches, which made it hard to roll. And with insurance, that cost me maybe a good $500-$600. And the doctor's telling you don't continue, and definitely makes you want to think, well, I already spent so much money on this. And for me, it was more like of well, I'm more in now. Like, I just invested $600 into jujitsu. Like, I'm not gonna.
yeah, that's funny, huh? For me, I think the hardest part of it was basically sleeping on the couch, being propped up. You got all this this brand new hardware in your neck, and you realize that there was a consequence to not training properly. And the consequence, you're feeling it because you're the one that just had surgery. But there's another consequence. You also have your son and a newborn baby and a wife that is pulling all the weight around the house because you are couch locked, right? And you're taking pain medication because you broke your damn neck. Um, as far as work, right? Like, obviously, you go on a leave of absence because that's not a normal injury. That's not a headache. That's not a tummy ache. And that's certainly not a flu. That's just a next level moment in life. Um, so while it didn't deter me from getting back on the mats, I definitely had to recalibrate, so that I could be able to look my wife in the eyes and say, look, I'm going back, and I'm going to go back with a different perspective.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something that maybe people won't even have considered. You just hear broken neck, and then you hear recovery, and there's all these little things that life,
Yeah,
marriage,
yeah,
kids,
it's not.
responsibility.
That's right. I mean, when you get married, you sign the contract, right? Like, that's essentially, you know, um, the love's there, but the obligation is there. Like, if you don't feel that way about your spouse, you shouldn't have a spouse. you know um, I felt worse for her putting in more work around the house and with the kids and everything, than I did about my neck, that's for sure. So, basically, I just made a commitment to, um, proper training, proper strength and conditioning, proper dieting, recovery. Just I was able to kick the pain medication, through the use of cannabis, and no looking back. I just recalibrated completely, and just kickstarted jujitsu back up again, and but just decided to do it the right way. And I had a lot of good advisors and a great professor. Um, a lot of great professors, actually, black belts, that walked and guided me through the process of learning how to train the right way. So it's interesting, right? It's not just about you in sports, right? There's the other element, and that's the other people in your life. Um, Especially when you have a mortgage and business and kids, and it's a lot. It's a lot to juggle.
Yes, I've mentioned it in other podcasts before that, some people call us weekend warriors, or, but the professional athletes have everything. And when they get injured, they have all the support. And not that it's any easier coming back from like some sort of Achilles or neck, but when you have that extra support, the financial backings to have like babysitters and someone to help out, makes it so much easier. So I respect the average Joe type of athlete in a
Yeah.
way more.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, going through something like that, it puts a lot of context to, like say like the role models that I have now, right? When I look around say the jujitsu world, or I look around even the academy, Marumbi Academy, there are people and guys that are, say in their late 40s, early 50s, that are in better shape than maybe any other human being that I know, like anyone. And the reason that they're able to, do what they love to do on the mats is because they learned how to do it right. And they also, and what I, come to find out, big surprise, Ray, they got injuries too along the way, right? It's not a tickle sport. It's, we're trying to choke the shit out of somebody, or snatch a limb, like it's controlled combat, so things are going to happen. um, there's no way around it. You're going to get injured. Accidents are going to happen. You're going to have moments where you know kick it into high gear when you shouldn't, and you're going to have moments when you should have stepped on the gas and you didn't, and you got hurt that way. So there's a lot to learn. It's a fight.
That's one of the things I love about jujitsu. It's a lot to learn, and I don't think it's a something you'll ever be able to say, "Oh, I mastered it." It's a lifelong journey.
No, never, never, never. I uh, i couldn't even imagine having those thoughts. Not even the thought would cross my mind that I've mastered even one technique. Just because it just, everything evolves too. You're shown a variation of something that you've done over and over and over for months and months and months, years and years and years, and somebody comes along and just gives you a different look at it, and the light bulb goes on, and you're like, wow. you know I've been doing this arm bar this way for 3 years, and I just learned in 30 seconds a completely different viewpoint. But that's kind of the magic of it, and for me, that's the hook that brings me back. Is that there's a learning process occurring. It's like a real education. Um, the same could be said for running. You know, baseball, batting cages. I mean, practice makes perfect. Yes. But you do need to see other looks along the way. You need to be able to take other people's opinions and kind of put your own style together.
Yeah, sports all around, just you can learn so much that translate into life. But I'm really interested to know, how was the conversation, and how did your wife kind of take it when you told her you want to go back after a broken neck?
You know what? I, it might sound corny and cliche, but she's truly like the most supportive human that I know. She never really gave me grief about it, and she, looking back, as a husband, as a father, just as a regular human being, she could have given me 10 times the shit that she did. But it's just not in her DNA to do that. She's just a very supportive person. And I think that the benefits of jujitsu had already become obvious, as far as my stress reduction, having an outlet, having like a team camaraderie, having kind of like a set of like-minded, goal-oriented friends. Um, a lot of things changed in life when I signed up at that academy. A lot of things changed for the positive. So, you know, I think as far as she was concerned, and she'll listen to this podcast eventually, and maybe she'll shake her head up and down or left and right, who knows. But I think that she figured out that it's something that makes me a better version of myself and a better father, better husband, better at work, um, less stress. I for me, I got to get it out of my system. I'm the type of person that I get pent up, and if I don't have an outlet, it's not that bad things happen, but I'm just not the best version of myself. So I just think that the benefits outweigh the negative, the negative moment.
I can fully understand that, and that's why, kind of similar situation. I didn't get a broken neck, but as soon as I kind of got my blue belt, COVID happened, and kind of takes you like, whoa, it's a whole different journey, and things are opening up. So I'm looking forward just to continue learning jujitsu and finding my academy and kind of just starting that whole bond. It's funny though. There's people that I started rolling with, and I still keep in contact with them just because that bond you get after you try to choke someone. It's so interesting compared to other sports.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of trust you have to have. I think ultimately it comes down to trust. Like in life, we grow up and we go through these lessons. We have our first job. We learn whether we can trust our first boss or not with information. We learn to trust colleagues, employees, family members, teachers. Um, Trust is a big part of the aging process. Like how you turn out in life has a lot to do with that. Um, and so when you put that kind of trust in another person to basically say, when I tap my hand on your shoulder, you will stop choking me, that's a lot of trust. I mean, you have to have faith in that process. So you end up with what I would say are, jujitsu colleagues, and you have like 20 people that you completely trust with your life. And I've never seen that in any other sport where you have that much trust in another human being.
That's a great way of looking at it, and I'm not sure that I've seen it in that way either. I compare communities, and like I'm gonna say probably the two friendliest communities is the running community and the jiu-jitsu community. And I think could be intimidating for the average person just to walk into any, you know, jujitsu studio, and that's why the average person doesn't. But if
Right.
you walk in there, you will meet some of the nicest men, women of all ages, races, whatever orientation they prefer to be called or are.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. And you definitely you figure out very quickly that when you strip a person of, say, their career or the clothes they wear, or they pull up in this car, that car, the other car, everybody gets in their gi and they get on the mats, and you know what, nobody gives a shit who you are outside of that academy. They really don't. They only care about who you are on the mats in that moment every night. They care about who you are in that moment every night. And they have to trust you, right? And you have to trust them. And you're basically playing physical combat chess with your body, right? So it's very interesting. There's not a lot of places in the world where a guy pulls up in a Porsche 911 Carrera, um, and bows his head to somebody who drives a Camry.
That's true. That's true. And were you coaching? Because I know you do coaching for your kids. Were you coaching before jiu-jitsu, baseball, or is it something that you've gotten more into as well? As we get older, we want to. I think came a point in my life where I want to kind of share what I've learned with the younger generation.
Yeah, I think it makes me I started coaching, or let's just say assistant coaching, just to be fair. Helping out, kind of being not just a sideline dad, but like a dad that's going to help the team and help coach the team, and eventually, put more effort in as I figured out just how passionate my son was about baseball. Um, but what you learn on the mats in jiu-jitsu certainly translates into um, the way you convey information, especially to little people, to kids. Um, I think it makes you a better coach. You definitely learn from your professors in jiu-jitsu how to command the attention of other people. Um, so I think it definitely rubs off, for sure. And, I can even think of this last season where, pretty much every parent on my son's team, as I'm, helping coach the team here, they all know that I train and that I, compete and have goals on the mats. I mean, super transparent about it. And I'm super transparent about it, not because I care that they know what I do, but I wanted them to have some type of perspective to realize that if I'm having a conversation with a kid, that I might have a clue about how to, bring out some of the positives, um, as far as mindset. Um, we've been through a few things. In jujitsu, you go through it every night. You're on the mat. You know, um, the ups and downs. Winning and losing, tapping out, tapping other people out. It's no different than swinging at a pitch in that particular context. Either you hit the ball or you don't. But there's a mindset behind it that'll ultimately make you successful. So I try to try to throw some little gems their way. They're still little guys, but I think it helps a lot.
And one of them is the one, the older one is the one playing baseball. Is that the only sport he plays?
Yeah, I mean, right now he's just a baseball junkie. That's it. He is a baseball fanatic. Um, he loves to throw hands. Like, right now I'm talking to you from a padded room. My garage is completely padded floors, padded sidewalls. I have striking dummies. Like basically the Dempsey dojo is always at the house. So he and I throw hands all the time, and we grapple and whatnot. But he doesn't go to formal classes right now because baseball is his priority. And the fact that he's 7 years old and plays at a level that most 7 year olds do not play at, and I'm proud to say it. Um, he knows what he likes, and I'm just going to let him run with it. And the nice thing about jiu-jitsu is that it's not a seasonal sport. It'll always be there for him. you know um, Learning baseball, you have a very narrow window of time to get a skill set to keep momentum as you age as a child. um, if you're not developing super early in baseball is not as fun 5 years later, compared to the kids that really put the time in. It's just not as fun, to play the sport. It might be fun to watch the sport no matter what, but to play baseball, you have to have some degrees of success. Otherwise, it's really not as fun as it could be.
And I would say that has to go with any sport. The younger you start, of course, you're going to get better technique and have an idea, a feel for the game, a feel for the action. It definitely helps. I feel, when I was younger, I didn't play any sports. I wanted to box. I wanted to do different things, but my parents were too busy uh, running their own business, so they didn't have time to take me. Uh, and so by the time I actually played like organized sport was in eighth grade. I learned the fundamentals of basketball barely, and by that time I was just way behind from other people. There's really hard to translate that into high school unless you're super athletic and gifted.
Right. Absolutely. It's all progressive, but if he wants to go back on the mats one day, the mats will always be there for him. And there's always mats in the garage too. So right now it's all about what he wants to do. And, whatever my boys want to do, I'm going to back them up, and that's it.
As it should, and it's so great to have the supports of positive parents, and that aren't just going to be like, well, no, you have to do jujitsu because I did jujitsu, or you have to do this because I did this, or you know, there's even
there's a
generationals.
yeah, there's a lot of that out there. There's obsessive parents for sure, and sometimes I wonder if people confuse me for one, just because I can be passionate when I'm out there coaching, but at the end of the day, it just comes down to, if he's happy playing ball, I'll keep coaching, and I'll keep pushing him to do it. The moment that baseball's not fun anymore, if he wants to duck out, as long as he's given a solid effort, and that he's actually making that decision and not just quitting, um, I'm for whatever he wants to do. It wouldn't bother me either way. Would I love to see him play some ball? Of course. But if he wants to grab a paintbrush, then that's cool too.
And I know how committed you are to jujitsu. So now, what are your long-term plans with jujitsu? And as far as trying to take out the undefeated Father Time, are you
I
trying
think
to
I think
compete till black belt till you get your earn your black belt, or
yeah, for sure. I think that when you've been through, say, like an injury, like I was, that I went through, like a neck break, like a full disc replacement. If that doesn't deter you, then you're pretty much you're on the path to black belt. Now you have to pay your dues. But I got bit by the bug, and that's it. I can't even I can't even fathom not having jujitsu in my life. And I think I'm 42 right now. I'll be 43 in September. And I would say that I would be very comfortable taking all the time in the world to get to black belt. Um, I'm not concerned with how fast it happens. Doesn't really matter. Um, I care about what happens in competition, but I don't care about the belt promotions as much as I do the journey. And doing things right. Um, so I think if I'm a badass 50-year-old man 8 years from now, and I'm able to teach other people how to replicate that, um, I think that would be a pretty amazing goal. And funny enough, there's quite a few role models that I have in jujitsu that are right at that 50, 51, 52 years old. Um, and they're incredible jujitsu practitioners. These are high level black belts. These are world beaters. You it's a mugger's worst nightmare. you know and at the same time, what I do notice in the character of some of these gentlemen that I look up to is that their kids look at them in a certain light and respect as well, because their kids have witnessed their dad struggle to get ahead and actually prevail. And I think that for me, the reason that I will be a black belt one day is to teach is for me, but it's also to teach my boys a lesson that no matter how much suffering I have to endure, that I'm willing to do it to be a better person. I think that's a huge lesson. You know, um, there's no amount of pressure to stop me. There's no amount of pain that's going to stop me. And I think that it's a really important lesson to pass forward. Um, I think people are really quick to judge youth, modern day. I think the average person that's 35 and up thinks that the kids are soft. You know, well, guess what? If you think kids are soft, then why don't you show them something that's hard, right? I mean, what kind of example are you going to be to turn your kids from soft to hard, and so they can weather the storms of their lives too? So for me, reaching black belt eventually just means that my kid's father will be a badass as they grow up. And I think that they're just going to know what dad's going through the whole time because I'm just going to be transparent. Does that make sense?
No, it does, and I actually absolutely love that. I'm most likely going to use that as my sound bite. If you think they're soft, like why don't you show them something hard? And that is
Yeah,
just
well,
so true.
Ray, it pisses me off. Obviously, we know each other well enough to have private conversations. Of course, we're on a podcast right now, but you know the the one thing that irritates me in this world are comments that come from people that aren't willing to do anything about it. It's like complaining about something obsessively. Like the way that, say, some 50 to 60 to 70-year-olds, they will judge the millennial generation, right? Or the generation that's younger now than the millennial generation. They actually say the word millennial in a negative context. Like it actually comes out of their mouths and it sounds negative, even though it's just the name of a generation, right? There's a connotation there. But at the same time, these are the same people that, you know, they're not doing anything about it to teach someone to be harder or to not quit or to not give up or to give them a good look at the way that you should live your life with honor, and dignity, respect. Do something about it. Don't just complain that kids these days don't know how to shake a hand properly. Listen, if a kid doesn't know how to shake a hand properly, the way that we feel a hand should be shaken when you meet a person, stop what you're doing and teach them how to shake the damn hand. Get off your ass and, teach them the fucking handshake. Don't just complain about it.
I was thinking that earlier today. Maybe when I was younger, I used to be more verbal on social media and just post like ridiculous shit, basically. But as I got older, I realized it's easy to destroy. I don't want to post unless I come up with a solution or a good idea, or I know that there's other people smarter than me that are working on that. But it's so easy to destroy and just be negative. And but how
Yeah,
about you show them an alternative?
that's what I'm saying. And I think it's just super important that you be, there's so many cliches out there, but like be the example, right? Like how could I possibly look my two boys in the eye when they're going through something if I don't think they know in their heart that dad's been through something, right? If they know that dad struggled and showed them the way to push through pressure and adversity, they're going to understand it. They're going to respect my words more, down the road. It'll be more impactful, you know. Um, you just can't be fake, and I think a lot of people are actually very fake with their kids. I think they're not as honest about um, their shortcomings. They inflate themselves a bit. I try to give my kids a pretty honest look at life, and it's just nice to know that jujitsu is there to back me up. So yeah, that's probably a whole nother podcast is complaining about the complainers.
Well, we can definitely do that for sure in the future. And you mentioned competing next week, so is that uh, your only competition for the rest of the year, or are you
No,
planning to do more?
I've got it lined up pretty well currently. So, um, fighting at 208 pounds, Jiu Jitsu World League next Saturday on the 17th. Then it's back to Las Vegas for High Rollers Vegas Open in August. Um, it's possible that I might travel to a few other tournaments, and then um, for sure I will be competing at Masters Worlds in Las Vegas. For the actual World Championships for sure. Um, it's an inevitable part of this year's journey, and it's something that I really have to do now. I feel there's a sense of urgency for me to do it now, because I want to make sure that, you know, if my son starts getting super competitive with baseball and ends up on some rock star travel teams, I'm jujitsu will take a back seat as far as me competing, because my kids will come first. So I just feel like this year is a great year to get out there and just leave it all on the mats and see what happens. If I'm ultimately very, very successful in competition, I think it would be easier to continue competing. Um, but I think now's the time for me to get out there and do at least, maybe four competitions before the new year.
Well, that sounds like for me. Anytime I have events coming up, keeps me motivated. So it sounds like you'll be motivated for the whole year to come, which is great, especially towards the end of the year when all the good holiday season food comes out and the
Yeah,
pound back on easier.
yeah, there's no doubt about that. I mean, but there really is nothing like having something circled on the calendar. For me, it's like, that calendar on the fridge is the law of the land. You circle this date 2 months out, 3 months out. You don't, in my house, you don't circle that date unless you mean it and you're going to follow through, you know? And so there's something about having that date circled on the calendar that it's really motivating. Um, every day is training with intention and training with a purpose. It's not just going to show up. It's not just going to work out. I think the intention elevates and the focus elevates. It's just a good situation. I think competition's great for adults. That are casual. Like I know that you run, and I know a lot of people that do 5K races, and they downplay it, like, oh, it's no big deal. I just do it for a charity, or I just kind of run with my friends, twice a year doing 5Ks. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm like, listen, you're obviously taking it seriously because you're working up to the 5K. I see you doing it. Like, give yourself some credit. Like, you have to earn it. And just like jujitsu, I kind of see running in the same light. And I think it's awesome that you're attacking it the way you are.
I noticed that a lot as far as runners and um, in jiu-jitsu. We I always hear runners say, "I only ran like 3 miles," or "It was only a mile," or "I'm only a blue belt," or "I'm only a purple
Yeah,
belt." And I'm like, in a way, it's just kind of being humble, but at the same time, it's like, oh, that's a huge accomplishment.
I just feel like it's okay to pat yourself on the back a little bit. Like listen, you need momentum in this world to be successful. This is not a mystery. This is not a secret, right? You need momentum. That's what you really need. You got to put one foot in front of the other, gain some traction. That's how success starts. So it's okay to pat yourself on the back. You know, before before the last time I competed, in Las Vegas, I was very comfortable talking some shit because I was pumping myself up. And people that are really close to me, they knew I was pumping myself up, right? Because a little ego would creep out once in a while. It still does creep out. Like I'm competing next week for crying out loud, right? I mean, you know, it's okay to pump yourself up. It's healthy. You need traction. You need momentum. You have to get your head on straight. When it's game time, it needs to be game time. And so I think if you run 3 miles, and then you run 3.2 the next day, or 3 days later, or 3 weeks later, I mean, just take a minute and recognize it. You're better than 99% sitting on the couch. You're actually doing something. You know, you can't just, oh, I want to work out again soon is like the saddest thing that you can say. you know, just freaking go do something. Get some momentum, and that'll push you forward. You know, and think about it like this: if I didn't have momentum prior to my neck breaking, would I have ever gotten back on the mat?
I
No
would
way.
doubt it.
No
And
way. Why would I have gone back? You know, it's because I was building momentum. I gave myself the opportunity to see a better like vision of myself in the future. I allowed that opportunity. That's what competing does. It puts you in the hot seat. You know, Even just going to class sometimes and having a rigorous training session puts you in the hot seat. And if you do jujitsu, you know what I'm talking about. You know, um, if you've ever been in a fight in your entire life, imagine doing that 7 times a night, 4 days a week. That just even that context, right? If you've never done jujitsu in your life, but you've been in a street fight and you know what adrenaline feels like, and you know what it's like to where it's them or you, just imagine yourself doing that 4 days a week, 7 times each day, you know, and imagine like the way that changes the way you look at adversity and the way that you look at the struggle of this, that, or the other. Um, if you get into 7 fights in a night, the next day when your boss is giving you shit about something that's really nominal, you tend to have a little smirk on your face instead of being nervous just because it's your boss, right? It's a mindset thing. You got to have that momentum if you want to be successful. Jiu-jitsu is just a great tool to help you as a person to gain some traction and some momentum to move forward.
all right. And for my last question, want to be respectful of your time. Is you know, a lot of people, when it comes to that big event, that competition, that race, their nerves is probably the biggest thing. Do you still get nervous? And what do you do to, you know,
No,
no?
nope, no, not at all. I know that it sounds ridiculous, and I don't really understand why I don't feel anything when I walk out there to compete. I just don't. I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that I know, because I don't just train jujitsu. I kind of study jujitsu. I watch matches all the time. I've watched the history of jujitsu. Like I understand the background of jujitsu. Like I'm all in. I bought the T-shirt and I wear it everywhere, right? So I mean, it's just the way it is. Um, I just think drinking the Kool-Aid, it's a little different. Um, I can't remember where I was going with it, right?
No problem. Uh, I just find it fascinating. I know people that like basically are like, don't throw up before a competition or before a
Oh
race.
yeah, yeah. We were talking about nerves. Sorry about that. Yeah. That's the cannabis in my my recovery. So, um, a little sidetrack there for a second, but basically, for whatever reason, I've never been a nervous type. Um, I think my dad did a good job. I give him a lot of credit. I've just never been the type of person to run kicking and screaming down the street or to freak out. I'm pretty level, and I also know who I train with. You know, I'm really fortunate to train at a jiu-jitsu academy that has multiple world champion, like active world champions, multiple and multiple active UFC fighters that are successful UFC fighters. It's just the quality is so high, and it might sound like if you're in the jujitsu world, you might just be like, oh, Jack's talking some shit. But no, but we also know the truth, and that's there's levels to the game, and if you're lucky enough to live in a place where legends are available to train you, I mean, it's a blessing. It's a blessing. You know, um, and so I take an ass whooping from legends all the time, and professional athletes. So as far as I'm concerned, when I walked out on Memorial Day weekend in Vegas, and I looked at my opponent, and he was 27 years old. I'm 42. He's 6'7". I'm 6'1". He's shredded because he's a stud. He's basically on his way to probably becoming a professional athlete. If he wanted to continue, he'd probably do great. He gave me a good beating for sure. But I wasn't nervous about it. I wasn't concerned even in the slightest bit, because what I get put through in my own academy, no one's going to dish that out to me on the mats. Nobody that I meet for 10 minutes of my life is going to impact me that much. I just have that mindset.
Uh, Thank you for all that, Jack. I really appreciate you being on here, and that's something that I would love to have you on in the future, and we could discuss more. You're a competitor in high rollers, which is a tournament that maybe people will look down on, or it's something that would be great for this platform to discuss cannabis and jiu-jitsu. And in that tournament, you actually get to smoke before you compete,
You
and
can if you want to. I mean,
if
it's
you
not.
want to.
Yeah, it's not like a mandate, but it's part of it's more of a cultural it's more of a cultural thing. I think from the outside looking in, if you're not in the jiu-jitsu world, and you're not in the cannabis world in any way, shape, or form, you're just not going to get it. You know, um, just like I don't get why people sit around and play mahjong, right? Like I don't do that. That's not my jam. It doesn't mean that I don't think it's cool that they like it. But it's like, if you smoke weed, great. If you don't, great. If you do jujitsu, great. If you don't, great. Like whatever your thing is, like I'll support it. You know. Um, so the only thing that I ever ask for my friends and colleagues and family is that, they understand that you know their role is to be my friend is to support what I like to do. And that's it.
Yes, I do feel that there's a stigma in the United States, maybe all over the world, where you know, for a fact, we know that professional athletes have been smoking marijuana, not just in jiu-jitsu as the cultural thing, but in the NFL, in the NBA. And after they retire, they come out and they're opening up their cannabis shops. And, uh, there's just, I'm not saying for people, especially youth, to go out and smoke weed, but there's definitely a stigma towards marijuana still. And we're in 2021 with a lot of countries legalizing it. So I definitely feel that would be a great topic for you to come back on, especially
Yeah, no, I'd be
before you
happy to
compete
talk.
on that?
I'd
Yeah.
be happy. I'd be happy to talk about it, especially in August, right before I go to compete on that particular stage. But I will leave you with one little kind of thought about it, just for now, and that's that people make a very big deal and raise a lot of hell about the opioid crisis in the country. Right? We see it on the news. The hospitals see it. There's people in recovery. It's very real. It's very, very real. I mean, people are dying from overdoses from like the same medication I took when I broke my neck, right? If I hadn't found a healthy alternative, think of the addiction that that I would have today. You know, I would be no different than somebody on the Channel 11 news that had an opioid overdose. Okay. So you can kill yourself in one night with a bottle of pills. Anybody can do it. That's something that, I mean, you can go to the pharmacy right now and ingest enough of anything and overdose this evening. But you know what? You cannot smoke yourself to death, as far as like a session of marijuana, you know, you're not going to overdose and die. So if we talk about harm reduction, I'm not talking about, um, kids or anything like that. But what I'm talking about is being a grown human being. You're able to buy alcohol. Well, you should be able to buy something that it's going to help your body less harmfully than an opioid. So that's all I have to say about that for now.
Thank you for adding that. And once again, Jack, thank you so much for being my guest. And it was a great conversation. Look forward to having you on in the future. And I hope everyone who listened in enjoyed it. And thank you once again.
Yeah, thanks so much, Coach Ray. Love to follow your journey, and I'm sure we'll be talking later next week. Thanks so much.